3 spine-chilling, unexplained work horror stories. Terrifying encounters revealed after hours. Rachel's heart raced each time she clocked in for her night shift at the Maplewood Post Office. She heard the whispers about it, unexplained shadows skimming the walls as if the building had a life of its own. Stories of ghostly figures inching closer, creeping into the lives of unsuspecting workers. And yet, all she wanted was a secure paycheck to feed her 2 little ones and keep the lights on. But as she pushed open the heavy metal door, an icy draft grazed her skin, sending shivers down her spine. Every night turned into a fresh horror show, the clatter of machinery like the clanging bells of doom. Familiar laughter of co-workers soon morphed into uneasy glances. Something shifted when the clock struck midnight. Lights flickered like warnings, casting strange shadows that danced across the break room, snickering as they became unwelcome guests. Her colleagues whispered among themselves, throwing uneasy glances at the dark corners. And then there were the texts. "I see you," the first one read, not signed and laced with an eerie chill. The second one was worse, "You shouldn't be alone." Rachel's hands trembled as she stared at her phone, panic rising like bile in her throat. Those words bore into her. Someone knew her struggles, knew her ties to Maplewood, how she struggled to juggle work and motherhood, how she found comfort in sometimes lingering too long in the aisles of the grocery store, just to escape the weight of her responsibilities. Each visit to the post office became a horror fest, punctuated only by the whispers echoing off the walls. It was becoming harder to differentiate between paranoia and reality. The usual chatter of the office grew sparse. The hum of machines morphed into a sinister lullaby. That S when Rachel saw them, silhouettes lurking just outside the windows. Her heart plummeted as she envisioned home invasions, threats to her children, shadows warping into sinister figures ready to pounce. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. Panic reached a peak when one of her co-workers vanished. One moment he was stacking parcels. The next he simply disappeared. The buzz of disbelief shot through the remaining employees, unsettling theories igniting like wildfire. Whispers twisted through the office like a noose around Rachel's throat. Could it be one of them? The friendly neighbor who smiled at her? The other mothers she chatted with? They once felt like sanctuary but now became haunting specters in her mind. Rachel's days merged into sleepless nights as dread seeped into her life. Each text ringing in her pocket sent her heart racing. The more she tried to shield her children, the more exposed they felt. Something wicked lurked, and it bore the face of familiarity. As fear tightened its grip, Rachel steeled her resolve to uncover the dark truth, the predator hiding in plain sight. But just when she thought she grasped a lead, the frightening truth arrived in a final text, jarring her to the core. The person she trusted the most was orchestrating her nightmare. And just beyond the window, the shadows shifted into focus. Cold sweat clung to Rachel's skin as she stared out the window, the moonlight casting an otherworldly glow on the figures outside. They hovered, almost waiting, their features indistinct yet painfully familiar. Panic surged through her veins, and as she turned away, every fiber of her being screamed for her to flee. But she couldn't. Not with her children at home, not with the darkness swirling around her. The phone buzzed again, jolting her from her thoughts. "You're closer than you think," it read. The hairs on her neck prickled. Who was this? More importantly, how did they know her? She felt exposed, as if the walls themselves were now part of some sinister game being played at her expense. A burst of resolve shot through her. This had gone too far. She crept toward the break room, her heart a relentless drum. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting elongated shadows until they teetered on the edge of her sanity. She could hear her co-workers' hushed tones trailing off into anxious murmurs. What were they talking about? Something unseen lurked just beyond, and dread gnawed at the corners of her mind. Rachel glanced to the staff room. A space that had once felt comforting now transformed into a den of betrayal. What if it's one of you? The thought coiled tightly in her chest as she imagined her colleagues whispering behind her back, possibly aligning themselves with whatever was tormenting her. A rustle caught her ear, sharp and sudden. Whipping around, she saw nothing but the eerie glow of the vending machine. The shadows elongated and twisted, their edges scraping against her fear. Taking a deep breath, she pressed on, intent on uncovering the truth of those ghostly figures and the identity of her nightmarish tormentor. As she reached her desk, she noticed a piece of paper staring back at her. It was a printout that had not been there before. Rachel's fingers trembled as she picked it up. It read, "We know what you did." Chaos erupted inside her. What did they know? Had they uncovered secrets she had buried deep? The thought could only mean more sleepless nights. Just then, the office door slammed. It echoed like a gunshot, slicing through the tension. She whipped around, her heart galloping in her chest. No one else was in the office. The whispers ceased, and quiet hung heavy in the air. She stood alone. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. With shaking hands, she glanced down at the screen. Another text. "Turn around." A chill seized her spine. She hesitated, dread pooling in her stomach. What if it was a prank? Or worse, a deliberate threat? But her curiosity, fueled by panic, overridden her hesitation. Rachel slowly turned, dread pooling into icy water in her veins. There, just beyond the darkened entryway, stood a figure barely illuminated but unmistakably familiar. The blinding fear surged again, cutting off her breath. She opened her mouth to scream, but even the sound betrayed her. The figure slowly stepped forward, revealing a face she knew all too well. "Rachel," it whispered, the voice a cruel echo of comfort. With a pounding heart, she stepped back, the words trapped in her throat. This nightmare was only just beginning, and reality itself felt like it was unraveling. But her thoughts swirled as she gripped the edge of her desk. Why were they here? What did they want? The shadow loomed larger, stealing away the light. And then, as time seemed to freeze, it spoke the words that twisted the knife deeper. "You should have never come back." Rachel's instincts screamed that something terrible was about to unfold. But she had to confront whatever horror awaited her. She had to know. What happened next? The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a twisted smirk that twisted Rachel's stomach into knots. It was her brother, Jason. Or at least it looked like him. The familiar contours of his face were present, but his eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity that made Rachel's skin crawl. "Jason?" she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. "What happened to you?" He took another step forward, and she felt the air thicken, pressing down on her chest. "You left me," he said, each word slow and deliberate. "You abandoned me in the dark. It's time to make things right." Rachel's mind raced, struggling to comprehend. This couldn't be happening. Memories of their last moments together surged, blurring with the shadows of her fears. 6 months ago, she had chosen her safety over him, sealed him away after a tragic accident that had marked them both. Hadn't she done it to protect her family? But standing here now, it all felt like a slippery lie. "Please, Jason." The figure lunged at her, and she stumbled back, nearly tripping over her chair. The cold certainty of desperation pulled at her, and she had to fight against the rising tide of panic. "What do you want?" His laughter, eerie and hollow, echoed off the walls. "You think I'm the one with demands?" He gestured towards the shadows swirling around him, and they pulsed with a life of their own. This is just the beginning." Silent figures emerged from the darkness, their forms barely discernible. Each bore a ghostly resemblance to people she once knew, friends, co-workers, even distant family. Their faces twisted in shame, anger, and betrayal as they glided towards her. "You shouldn't have come back," the group intoned, a cacophony of whispered tones that merged into one chilling voice. "You have to hang onto your secrets." Or else. The air crackled with a palpable tension, and Rachel's legs felt like lead. They were closing in on her, the shadows encroaching, and she fought against the urge to scream. I didn't mean to, they deserve to be free. Just like you, another figure rasped. A woman with pale, lifeless eyes stepped forward, reaching out to her with a trembling hand. You're tainted, Rachel. You're just as guilty as the rest of us. The weight of their accusations bore down hard. A sharp pain pierced her heart, and she staggered, clinging to her desk for balance. As the figures closed in, she felt a cold breath against her neck. The realization surged dizzyingly. Each figure represented a piece of her guilt. Every choice she'd made to protect her life had cost someone else theirs. Desperately, Rachel glanced around the room, searching for an escape, but the door loomed behind her, solid and unforgiving. No, I won't let this happen, she cried, rage and fear coiling in her gut. But as Jason took another step closer, a flicker of recognition danced in his eyes, familiar yet unsteady. Was there still a fragment of the brother she knew behind that twisted facade? Rachel, he murmured softly, as if grappling with a long-buried truth. You don't know how deep the darkness goes, and neither do they. The shadows paused, silent for just a moment, and Rachel seized the moment to break free, pushing past Jason. She dashed toward the back exit. The whispers rose again, louder, furious, chasing her violently. She flung open the door and rushed into the blackened hallway, her heart racing. But as she moved, she felt a weight clinging to her, as if the dark figures were wrapped around her ankles, pulling her back. Rachel! Jason's voice cut through the chaos, lingering behind her, almost a plea, but also a warning. You can't escape your past. Just as she neared the stairwell, another message pinged her phone, visible only for a moment in the shadows. You can't run from the truth forever. The echoes of her brother's voice faded into the dark, mingling with the whispers of the others. Outside the wall of darkness, she could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. What truth awaited her if she faced it? And if she turned back, would she lose everything or uncover something far more horrifying? Rachel stumbled into the hallway, breathless and panting. The darkness closed in, heavy and oppressive, as she darted past flickering lights that seemed to mock her race against fate. Her heart thrummed wildly, each beat underscored by the frantic whispers chasing her from the dim room. The shadows were alive, writhing and clawing at her heels, urging her to remember what she wished to forget. Keep moving, she chanted to herself, though doubt clawed at her resolve. Did she really want to escape? Did she truly believe she could outrun the ghosts of her past? The frantic patter of her bare feet echoed through the eerie silence, swallowed almost instantly by the omnipresent void around her. Each door she passed stood as a sentinel, mute and unmoving, traps rather than escapes. As she barreled down the hallway, the oppressive atmosphere shifted. The last remnants of Jason's plea echoed in her ears, twisting her stomach. You can't escape your past. It was a mantra made real, a dark song of inevitability. And yet, amidst her fear, a seed of defiance sprouted. No, she wasn't going to let them win. Suddenly, the hallway bent and twisted unnaturally, becoming a labyrinth of despair. The exit seemed to vanish, replaced with a door that bore a chilling inscription. Let the past be your guide or your demise. A shiver cascaded down her spine as she reached for the handle, but something stilled her hand. What if this was a trap? What if she was only stepping deeper into her own nightmares? As she hesitated, she heard the rasping breaths of those dark figures. They were regrouping, merging like liquid smoke, their silhouettes snapping into focus. They were closer now, almost tangible. Rage and regret flared up inside her, igniting her panic. No, Rachel screamed, throwing herself back the way she came, heart racing. She was heading straight for Jason, the thought sending terror coursing through her. But the voices of the damned were all around her now, drowning out her thoughts. You can't run. You are one of us, they wailed, calling to her like sirens beckoning sailors to their doom. Desperate, Rachel sprinted towards the nearest door, wrenching it open. The sight before her was surreal, a room drenched in shadows, flickering candles casting erratic light over images of family members. their faces stretched into grimaces of agony. Each picture was etched into her memory. She knew the stories well. They were victims of the past she thought she had left behind. "No, I can't," she murmured, stumbling backward. But the door slammed shut behind her, locking her into the claustrophobic silence filled with whispers. "Face your guilt, Rachel." A voice cracked like glass, the image of her mother appearing from the gloom, her expression a mix of sorrow and accusation. "You think you're innocent? Stop!" Rachel cried, raising her hands as if to shield herself from the piercing truth looming before her. "I did what I had to do. Did you?" The shadows crept closer, brushing her like cold water. "Do you really believe that?" The ground beneath her feet trembled, pulsing like a heartbeat, and Rachel felt the walls closing in, her breath growing shallow. "You're not real," she gasped. "You can't hold me." She spun around, searching for a way out, but the weight of their expectations, their resentments filled the space like smoke, stifling her. But then, something changed. A flicker of hope ignited within her, a spark to fight through the clutches of despair. With newfound determination, she reached out to the shadows, demanding to know what they wanted of her. "Freedom," the figures chanted in unison, letting the word hang heavy in the air. "But first you must choose." Rachel felt the pulse of dread and defiance bubbling in her chest. The choice, the ultimate choice, was hers to make. But what would it cost her? What part of her soul would she be forced to sacrifice in the face of their dark desires? In that moment, the lights flickered, casting the room in eerie darkness once again. There was a split second of silence before a cacophony of echoes filled the air. Then she heard Jason's voice, softer now but tinged with unmistakable sorrow. "Don't let them take you, Rachel. Find the truth before it's too late." The door rattled with a force that sent shivers up her spine. Rachel's heart raced as whispers coiled around her, a tight noose of expectations. Would she confront the shadows and embrace the truth, or would she surrender to the darkness claiming her? Trembling, her fingers brushed against the door, ready to choose. But as she closed her eyes, she wondered, what if the truth was even darker than she imagined? The moment Rachel hesitated, the room pulsed with an almost sentient energy. The shadows thickened, their whispers veering from enticing to menacing, a warning buried under despair. She could feel their icy breath on her neck, a blend of grief and malice wrapping around her like a shroud. Suddenly, she opened her eyes, determination firing through her veins. "No more running," she breathed, her resolve hardening like steel. Rachel turned and yanked the door open. The moment she stepped through, she was plunged into an abyss of shadows that felt alive, twisting around her, heavy and suffocating. She staggered as inklings of memories began to resurface, unmistakable images of blood and betrayal flickered like a dying flame. The faces of her family, their laughter dulled by suffering, leered from a distance. "Face us," they cried out, their voices merging into a haunting chorus. "Face what you did." Rachel stumbled, clutching her head as memories invaded her mind like uninvited guests. The night of the accident played out, horrific and vivid. She tried to hush the voices within, but the truth clawed its way to the surface, relentless and cruel. It was no longer a dark past. It was a living nightmare. "Stop," she screamed. "You don't get to hold me anymore." The walls vibrated with her defiance, but the shadows only thickened. They loomed closer, transforming into monstrous figures with hollow eyes, mirroring her guilt back at her. Rachel pressed her palms against her temples, feeling reality slipping away. "Make the choice, Rachel," a voice hissed, chilling her blood. "Are you willing to abandon all hope? Your freedom comes at a price." She had always known the price. It was the only thing she ever feared. Turning away from the price meant standing tall against the consequences of her actions. Rachel took a shaky breath, recognizing the challenge inherent in that choice. "Maybe I can change it," she stammered, her voice trembling. "Maybe this time can be different." Her defiance echoed around her, glories and ghosts colliding, filling the air with a toxic mixture. For a brief moment, silence swallowed the cacophony. Then, Something stirred in the darkness, an immense form materialized, obscured by shadow but exuding an ominous presence. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. The creature loomed, its shape vaguely human, yet grotesque, as if assembling out of nightmares. "You dare to challenge the past?" It growled, a voice rumbling like thunder. "You cannot rewrite what is written." Rachel stepped back, heart racing, every beat a thunderclap in her ears. "I can try," she shouted back, the words escaping her before she could steady them. But those words created a ripple in the fabric of the darkness, the creature recoiling slightly as if struck. In that split second, a thought ignited in Rachel's mind. What if she brought others with her? Others who had also lost others like Jason? "Let me in," she screamed, eyes wide, desperation clawing at her throat. "Let them come with me. I'll face it all. But let us all be free." The entity halting. For the first time, it appeared almost contemplative, the shadows swirling around it like a tempest. Silently, they seemed to assess her offering, the furious whispers quieting to an unnerving stillness. But then, a chilling laugh erupted from the darkness, echoing like a death knell. "Freedom comes at such a cost, Rachel. Are you willing to sacrifice their fate for your own?" The ground beneath her trembled again, threatening to shatter. The shadows erupted around her, a vortex of confusion and terror dancing before her eyes. Rachel felt her grip on reality slipping, the weight of her decision pressing down, threatening to suffocate her. Now, the figure's voice echoed ominously. The choice truly begins as the shadows expanded, pulling her in multiple directions. Rachel felt the choice morphing into a grotesque reality. Who would she save? Who would she sacrifice? The horror of her situation bore down. In this confrontation of nightmares, the cost of freedom was about to become painfully clear. The shadows surged, pulling at Rachel's limbs, as if every twisted whisper had a life of its own. Her heart thudded against her ribs, raw desperation threading through her veins. "I can't decide," she cried out, her voice laced with panic. "Please, someone help me." The cacophony of their laughter throbbed in her ears, dark and mocking. The shadows around her thickened, morphing into grotesque shapes that seemed to breathe in her fear. Flickers of faces flitted in and out of focus, some familiar, others alien. But all of them wore expressions of betrayal, pain, and anger. "Are you really willing to risk our lives for your redemption?" One voice slithered through the darkness, painfully familiar. Rachel squinted into the murky depths, recognizing Jason, his features hauntingly twisted. "You don't even know what you're asking for." "No, you don't understand," she shouted, frustration boiling over. "I'm trying to undo what I did. I can help you. I can help all of us." The entity's laughter grew louder, drowning out her protest. "Help? You? Look at what you did." Rachel's breath quickened, spiraling into a cavern of self-loathing. Memories flooded her, choking her resolve. The look in Jason's eyes right before the crash, the hollow sound of metal against flesh, the stench of gasoline and blood, pressed against her chest, nearly suffocating. I didn't mean to. No intentions will save you now." Another shadow hissed, creeping closer, its form stretching unnaturally. "You must decide whose life matters more." Terror clawed at Rachel's throat. She looked into the abyss, at the countless souls that had been lost, the price she had already paid. Names whispered through the air. Her parents, Jason. All the laughter turned to echoes of sorrow. "I can't choose." The ground trembled, and a blinding light flared from the depths of the shadows. The figure took a step forward, the monstrous face partially illuminated. It was both beautiful and horrifying, a reflection of every guilt she had ever harbored. It grinned, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "But the choice will be made, Rachel. Choose what you hold dear, or lose it all forever." As the shadows encircled her tighter, she felt their icy grip, an unbearable weight that made it hard to breathe. Visions flashed through her mind, Jason laughing at a family barbecue, the warmth of sunlight filtering in through the leaves. The memories twisted, merging with horrors that had marred them forever. Which would you rather condemn? The figure's voice twisted through the air, both seductive and cruel. Your own cowardice, or your loved one's suffering? Take your time, but remember, time is running out. Rachel gasped, the essence of panic igniting her senses. She stood on a precipice, surrounded by decisions that clawed at her sanity. Every second pulsed with urgency, the shadows inching closer, their collective breath chilling her soul. Face your past or drown in it, the entity taunted, its form warping, ready to ensnare her. With every ounce of willpower, Rachel screamed, I'll face it. I'll choose. The darkness surged, freezing her words like ice, the whispering shadows halting as they awaited her choice. But even as she stood poised on the brink of revelation, a deep sense of terror crept over her. Maybe the choice was never hers to make. And suddenly, she realized, one wrong decision could mean doom not just for her, but for everyone she loved. Oh God, what have I done? She moaned, as horror wrapped itself around her, squeezing tighter. Yet just as the shadows lunged forward, something flickered behind her, a glimmer of hope. But whose? And at what cost? As reality blurred and dread swelled, the whisper of destiny echoed in the darkness, leaving Rachel trapped between salvation and oblivion. Rachel felt the weight of the shadows closing in, pressing against her skin like a vice. She could hardly breathe, her chest heaving as if the darkness itself was trying to swallow her whole. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet the shadows were a maze, contorting around her, trapping her in their sinister embrace. Choose. Rachel, the monstrous figure twisted closer, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. Your loved ones or your own cowardice? This is the moment that defines you. Fingers trembling, she thought of Jason, of the way he had smiled before everything had gone wrong. Cold dread prickled at her skin as realization struck like a lightning bolt. She had already decided, hadn't she? Clenching her fists, she fought the rising tide of doubt. No more running, she shouted, her voice cutting through the mockery. The shadows halted, as if caught off guard by her sudden conviction. Interesting choice, the entity hissed, a glint of cruel amusement in its eyes. But there's a cost to every act of bravery. Rachel squared her shoulders, willing herself to stand tall against the swirling darkness. I want to face my past, she reiterated. Show me whatever it takes. In an instant, the air shifted. The oppressive shadows receded, not fully but just enough to create a narrow path forward. With each step, the light flickered, revealing scenes of her life, a disjointed montage filled with laughter and tears, joy and despair. Joyful family gatherings warped into violent memories, faces full of life twisting into ghostly visages frozen in time. Look closely, Rachel. The slithering voice lured her deeper. What are you really afraid of? The visions bore down on her, suffocating her with guilt. Each moment unfolded like a nightmare. The crash, Jason's face pale against the asphalt, the fiery wreckage, the deafening silence. Her heart raced, each beat echoing her guilt anew. Is it your cowardice, or the truth you hide? The entity pressed, drawing closer, its breath hot against her skin. Which part of your soul do you truly cherish? The real you or the one hiding from responsibility? Rachel squeezed her eyes shut, wishing it away, begging for escape. But as she opened them, the shadows morphed again. They writhed like snakes, forming into figures twisted with pain, her parents, friends, all staring at her, their anguish palpable. Rachel, Jason's familiar voice pierced through, suddenly clear among the hiss of shadows. You have to confront this. Remember us, our lives matter. What do you mean? She stammered, a swell of anxiety gripping her. The realization tugged at her gut. Facing her choices meant facing all of them. Your past has already chained us. Another shadow whispered, swirling back into view. Letting go could free us all. Panic washed over her. Let go? The specters began to retreat, their faces warping in uncertainty, and Rachel grasped the truth. Confronting her past wasn't just an option. It was the only way to break the cycle of horror she had summoned. Take me to them, she cried out. I'll do it. I'll confront my past. The shadows paused, hesitation rippling through them as if they were suddenly uncertain. The cacophony of their laughter transformed into whispers, doubt creeping into their ranks. And just as Rachel made her move toward the last curtain of darkness, she felt a hand grasp her arm, warm yet pulling her back. "Rachel!" Jason's voice echoed from the depths, hungering for her attention. "You can't just lean on them. Think of what truly matters. Are you ready to risk everything?" Her heart raced. What did he mean by everything? In that moment, she stood uncertain, a bridge between two worlds, the shadows of her past and the light of her fleeting hope. Before she could grasp the implication, the shadows surged again, swirling in a chaotic frenzy around her. They enveloped her, their whispers rising to a fever pitch, drowning out her thoughts as panic set in once more. Was this truly the path to redemption? Or would choosing again unleash even darker specters? And as the shadows pressed closer, something within her screamed for clarity. What awaited her beyond this twisted web? And would she ever find her way back? The shadows embraced her, their whispers wrapping tight around her like barbed wire, cutting into her resolve. Rachel felt her pulse thundering in her ears, each beat a reminder of her terrifying choice. She closed her eyes again, desperately wishing for the comfort of darkness. But there was no escape when the horrors of her past loomed so vividly in front of her. Everything. Jason's voice hung in the air, echoing through the terror. "You need to face what you've tried to bury. This is your moment." The shadows pulsed with energy, as if they thrived on her fear. Rachel's heart sank. Memories, tinged with hurt, clashed violently against the back of her mind. Faces flickered through the darkness, her parents' disappointed eyes. The joy of Christmases long gone, now warped by the crushing weight of loss. "Make it stop," she yelled, fracturing under the pressure. But silence swept across the shadows, and laughter dissolved into stillness. "Only you can stop it," the creature hissed, twisting in the curdled air. "You have to choose to unearth the truth." Unbidden images flashed. The accident, the twisted metal, the burning smell that haunted her still. Jason's laughter warped into cries, echoing in her ears like the tolling of a bell. "You didn't protect me, Rachel," his phantom voice taunted, tugging at the heartstrings of her guilt. The darkness shifted, morphing the memories into macabre scenes. Her heart threatened to give way. "Face it. Face the darkness you dread." The figure loomed, its eyes glimmering like dying stars. Rachel bit her lip, tasting iron. Remembering Jason, every good moment they had shared, she forced her gaze to lift, to pierce through the veil of memories. "I wasn't there, but I can't run anymore." As she took a step forward, the shadows whirled, spinning like a tempest of despair. She felt the energy surge in the air, a hot, electric pulse of unease. Another step. The ground beneath her feet felt like quicksand, pulling her down. A sharp pain clawed at her heart. "Embrace it." The monstrous visage twisted, its smile widening, showing row upon row of jagged teeth. "Let the past consume you. Relive the choice you made." A scream clawed its way to her throat as darkness transformed into vivid light, illuminating the memory of that fateful day. She stood, trapped and helpless, atop a crumbling road, surrounded by flashing lights and panicked voices, all blending into an echo she thought would never fade. "Jason." "No." Rachel trembled, feeling the truth wash over her like ice water. "I should have been there. I could have saved you." The shadows drew closer, reaching for her with icy fingers. "You still can save them," they hissed, "but it will cost you." "Will you lose everything to reclaim what was taken?" Fear surged through Rachel, knotting in her stomach like barbed wire. She gasped for breath, the weight of the specters constricting tighter. "I can't," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can't lose them again." In that instant, Rachel realized the enormity of the choice looming ahead, one that would push the boundaries of her heart and soul. And just like that, the shadows halted, retreated slightly as if waiting expectantly. "Choose, Rachel," they whispered. "Are you ready for the darkest truth? Will you face the cost of your salvation?" Her heart raced. Could she tread this new path, not just for her past but for every soul tied to her. As her hand trembled toward the flickering light, she felt the intensity of the moment like a firestorm raging inside her. The line between light and shadow grew blurrier, and she could no longer distinguish where one ended and the other began. What awaited her as she crossed that perilous boundary? Would she free them, or would she simply plunge into darkness? And just as she prepared to make her move, a chilling realization gripped her soul. Rachel hesitated, a bead of sweat trickling down her spine, pulsing with dread. She sensed the very fabric of her existence unraveling as she reached deeper into the light. It shimmered, swirling with colors she had never seen, beckoning her forward. "Do it!" The shadows jeered, their voices a jumbled symphony of her worst fears. "Embrace your flaws. Feed the darkness." As her fingertips grazed the luminous edge, a surge ricocheted through her. She was being pulled in, rooting her to a time long lost. The brilliant light morphed, bending like molten glass, and she was no longer standing on a precipice. Instead, she was back in the room, the air thick with the scent of smoke and burnt rubber. Rachel felt her chest tighten as she watched horror unfold before her. The vision wrapped around her mind like vines, twisting its way deeper. She was at the scene again, replaying the worst moment of her life. "Jason!" Her desperate scream echoed, cracking the air as it rang through her consciousness. The sound of sirens wailed in the background, a mournful reminder of the chaos that would forever haunt her. Shadows danced around her, mocking her helplessness. She was a spectator, condemned to relive this nightmare. What happened here? She struggled against the rising tide of despair, her heart stomping like the thunder of a war drum. "You know," whispered the creature, slithering on the edge of her awareness. "You chose wrong." Rage flared within her. She hadn't chosen. The accident had been unavoidable. Yet the shadows refused to relent. They spun their web tighter, forcing her to see every broken piece, every moment of negligence that carved open her heart. And then, just as she thought she might suffocate, clarity struck her. "No!" Rachel shouted, the force of her voice shocking even her. "This wasn't my fault. I was a kid." Her words echoed off unseen walls, clashing against the shadows pressing in on her. "Child, you still are," they hissed, winding toward her like a serpent poised to strike. "But see, you can change it if you're willing to lose everything again." Images of her parents flickered now, their faces etched with disappointment, flesh and blood, not just shadows. Would they suffer a second time? Fears hinged on her decisions. Each choice carried the weight of another life. The ground trembled beneath her like a storm threatening to break loose. Rachel felt the air shift, sharp and heavy. Dread clawed at her sanity. Would confronting the past pull her deeper into this void? "You can't. I want tea." Her voice quivered but burned with newfound conviction. "I refuse to be puppeteered by guilt." Stubborn girl. The shadows slithered closer, tendrils grasping and clawing, reaching for her throat. "Do you truly think you can run from your own sins?" "Maybe," Rachel gasped, pushing against the shadows with every ounce of strength. "But I will not let you own me." With a final cry fueled by anguish and defiance, she plunged into the light, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The shadows screamed, high-pitched and furious, as the light enveloped her. Darkness swirled violently around her, like a tempest rising from the murky depths. Would freedom be worth the cost? In the chaos, reality began to twist and dissolve, leaving only Rachel swimming in a realm of uncertainty. She fought for clarity as the light faded, replaced by flickering flashes of her family, Jason's face emerging like a beacon in a fog. But something felt wrong. "Rachel?" The voice floated toward her, familiar yet distant. "Why did you leave me?" Rachel's breath hitched. She spun, searching for him, for an answer. Each step she took wove new threads of terror. "Jason?" But the shadows were closing in again, cackling and swirling, as if knowing she was on the brink of a shocking revelation. Time ticked away, the walls creaking as a sense of impending doom loomed just out of sight. What truth awaited her in this fragile space between realms? What price would she pay to reclaim what was lost? The truth was begging to be revealed, and the darkness hungered to know if she would dare to face. Rachel's breath quickened as she moved through the swirling shadows, her heart hammering against her chest. The air around her crackled with an energy that felt both desperate and freeing. In this moment, as the edges of her nightmares threatened to engulf her, she knew she had to make a choice to reclaim her past, no matter the cost. "Jason!" she called out again, her voice slicing through the eerie silence. Each step brought her closer to the truth, but it also unveiled the weight of her guilt. "Show me!" With a jolt, the murky darkness lifted, revealing the remnants of her past shimmering in and out of focus. Her fingertips brushed against tendrils of light as her memories emerged, a montage of joy twisted painfully by loss. She saw her brother's laughter, the warmth of their family, and then, everything shattered. The crash, the fire, the echoing silence that followed. It all cried out for acknowledgement. "You have to face this, Rachel," a voice whispered through the haze. A familiar whisper, full of love yet laced with sorrow. Tears burned in Rachel's eyes as she stood in the thickening shadows. "I can't bear this pain anymore," she choked out, her heart tangled in chains of regret. "But to set you free, I have to." The shadows swelled, twisting and writhing but also holding a glimmer of light, the possibility of redemption. The weight of her guilt felt like a physical presence, clinging to her with every step she took, but so did the love she felt for her family, for Jason. "Enough of the games!" she shouted, finding strength through the chaos. "I'm done hiding behind fear." The darkness receded, now hesitant, their laughter replaced by a tense silence. "Rachel," the voice was gentle, soothing, and then it came into focus. Jason stood before her, his silhouette wavering, wrestling between hope and despair. "You left me in darkness. Don't do it again." As he stepped closer, his face twisted with shadows, yet his eyes still held that warmth she remembered. Her heart soared, yet sank. Could she truly face this haunting tragedy? "Please, Jason, I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting my own." Her voice trembled with the weight of her confession. "Are you?" He countered softly, his form flickering as if caught between this world and the next. "You chose fear over love. What if facing the truth could set us all free?" The shadows groaned, circling faster as if anticipating her next move. Rachel looked deeper, examining the past she had tried so hard to escape. Each flicker of memory reminded her. It's always been about love, its power, and its restraints. "Then I choose to forgive," Rachel declared, her voice gaining strength. "I forgive myself, and I forgive you for being lost." As those words cascaded from her lips, the shadows stilled, the cold air warming slightly, creating an unexpected peace. She stepped forward, reaching for Jason, their fingers almost touching, stretching across the gaping chasm of loss and regret. In that instant of vulnerability, Rachel's heart opened, embracing every painful moment they shared. Flickering lights erupted around them, illuminating the dark shadows, revealing the faces from her past friends, family, and remnants of those lost. They faded in and out, their expressions now one of understanding, a reassurance that this journey was not hers alone to face. "Let go," Jason urged, his voice vibrant with passion. "Let go of the chains binding you to the guilt and despair. Together we can break free." Gathering every ounce of love that coursed through her, Rachel whispered, "I release you all from the burden of my guilt." A whirlwind of light exploded as she spoke the words, radiating warmth and illumination, swallowing the darkness around them. The shadows recoiled, hissing and swirling, but Rachel held firm, pushing through the chaos with the power of her truth. "Never again," she breathed, feeling a surge of energy sweep through her. "You have no hold over me. I choose love, and love breaks all barriers." With a blinding flash, the shadows shattered like stained glass, dispersing into fragments of light. Rachel closed her eyes against the brightness, feeling warmth enveloping her entire being. When she opened them again, Rachel stepped into a world anew. She stood surrounded by sunlit fields, Jason at her side, The weight of past horrors finally lifted. The air felt lighter, carrying the sweet scent of freedom. The pain was still there, but it was no longer a prison. It was a part of her story. "Rachel, you did it," Jason whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "You broke the cycle." Tears streamed down her face, but this time they were tears of relief, healing. She had confronted her past and chosen light over darkness. Looking around, Rachel smiled through her tears, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin. "Together we can move on. We can finally rest." She reached out, grasping Jason's hand, and they both took a shared breath of freedom as the weight of the world melted away. The shadows no longer loomed like voracious beasts, but transformed into gentle wisps of memory, reminders of both love lost and life reclaimed. The path to healing lay ahead, one she was ready to embrace, a journey filled with hope. And in that moment, Rachel finally understood. Love, forgiveness, and courage were the true anchors in the storm of life. Don't just linger in the shadows. Take action. If you love these stories and want to hear more, you need to subscribe now. Smash that like button and feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Rachel's journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything,